Hello. I thought I could talk about working as a Muslim woman, my personal experience. When I reverted to Islam, I was teaching and I was in Singapore, so teaching is actually one of the recommended jobs for women in Islam, I believe. I guess that was a coincidence because I did English at university, and at the time when I was at uni, people always used to say to me, "Oh, what are you going to do? Are you going to be a teacher?" And I found it really irritating because I used to say to myself, "Why does everyone think because you do English you have to be a teacher?" But I did end up becoming a teacher for a little while, sort of along the way. And it was good. When I was in Singapore, I was teaching small classes. I had my own class, so I didn't really need to mingle with the other teachers that much. And the other teachers were all really friendly, and it was a very international bunch. There was somebody from the same town as my dad in England, so that's funny, and I think about him sometimes. Teacher Ryan, he sometimes used to be in the classroom next to me. He was really friendly, and then there were a few others. There was somebody from, where was he from? Might have been New Zealand. But he's had a lot of experience working in Indonesia, I think, so he was one of my colleagues as well. And all the teachers were from various countries, really, but then there was desk staff who tended to be Singaporeans, and they were really lovely people as well. I made some great friends, alhamdulillah. So that was quite, I would say that was quite a suitable job for a Muslim woman, the environment, really, because it was largely female. And then we used to present to the parents, so I had a lot of I had enough chance to interact with different people as well as teaching my classes, so it was really enjoyable. Then when I came back, I moved to London and I worked in various jobs, like telephone jobs, saying set things to people and following a script and talking on the telephone. Then I had an epiphany. I wonder if that's the right word. I used to have a little dictionary that my dad gave me when I was a teenager, and I used to use it all the time, and I kept it until this year when I did a big declutter of all my belongings and I got rid of that dictionary. But quite often that's one of the main things that I miss, because I look for it and then I think, oh yeah, I decluttered it. So an epiphany, maybe. I realised that I wanted to work in sports because I love sports and I'm a sporty person, but I haven't been able to do sports for a long time because of my injury that I had when I was about 17 years old. And I've had physical disabilities all my life, especially after that injury. So then I realised that I could work in a sporting environment without actually doing sport, and it was a really brilliant revelation for me, because after that I applied for loads of jobs within sports environments, and I found a really good one. It was a very big sports centre in London, and I was one of the duty managers there. I loved it. And, with that kind of role, you have the responsibility of opening the building. It was a really big place, so you had to go around, you had this big checklist and check all sorts of things. And another part of the role was that we whoever was duty manager at the time. So when I was on duty, then I would be the main first aider for the whole place. So I had to respond if there were any accidents, which there were, because football, they used to have twisted ankles, and tennis, sometimes people used to get hit in the face. Climbing had their own first aiders as well, and it's more of a dangerous sport in some senses, yeah. So that was really nice. I had, because I was the duty manager, one of the duty managers, we were in charge of all the keys, and there was like hundreds of keys because it was a big place. There were a lot of different doors and cupboards and things, buildings, and I inquired about where I could pray, and there was a little room next to the tennis office which didn't get used often, so I could just borrow that key. I had permission to just use that key. I mean, I had the keys anyway at the beginning because I was a duty manager, because I changed to a different role there later. I used to just borrow that key, go and pray, and then come back and just return the key. So it was really easy. I had one problem once with a different sort of like manager, like a couple of levels above me. This lady came in and she was a bit sort of and she told me off about the way I was wearing my uniform, because I was actually wearing it in that way to cover certain parts of my body because of my religion. But I'm pretty sure she didn't know that, but she came along and tugged it and said, "What's this? You shouldn't be wearing this." It was really kind of like, I found it quite aggressive, because somebody actually pulling on your clothes, even though she was kind of acting as if it was a playful thing. It was quite intimidating, and I was crying a lot afterwards. I mean, I got over it, but it wasn't much of a fun experience. But other than that, yeah, the uniform, I tended to be able to sort of adapt it in a suitable way that I wanted to dress. And then, there were a couple of issues with like mixing of the sexes there, because when I had to go and help the people who were working on the front desk, when they finished their shift, then I would need to help them like count up all the money from their till and separate everything for banking and, that kind of thing. Check that their till was balanced again for the next member of staff to use it later. And there was one like young man, younger than me, a bit younger than me, because I was only in my 20s. And when he was we had to go in this room, but it was glass, so it wasn't you wouldn't have thought there was that much kind of that could happen, because we were still sort of visible, except that there were computers around in front of some of the glass. But then he used to sometimes ask me things like, "Does your husband give you a massage?" Kind of really odd, strange, inappropriate questions, and I didn't know how to deal with that. So that kind of thing, that happened a couple of times with him, really. And there were other male members of staff who I had to work sort of one-to-one with, but just for short periods of time, so that was a little bit problematic, but nothing really bad happened. And then later on, I got internally promoted. Actually, it was the lady I just mentioned who was that manager lady who recommended me for that role. So, yeah, I have to be grateful to her anyway, because they were looking for somebody for a different department but within the same organisation. And then she suggested me because she'd already been working with me when I was doing my duty manager role. And then I interviewed for that job and I got it. They preferred me to the external candidates that they'd been interviewing, and it was really brilliant, because when I started that role then, that was a marketing role, and the lady who induction, she did my induction. She was from Sri Lanka, and she explained everything step by step. She had like quite a lot of routines for how she used to do things, and she listed it all out, but she always used to go, "Don't let your inbox get any emails. You have to keep it empty all the time." And then, because she was watching me for about 2 days, she was getting really like aggravated and like sort of upset that my inbox wasn't empty, because I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to do that at the time. But she'd been trained in kind of like secretarial background and stuff like that before she learned marketing, so she was like, no, you need to do your inbox. I don't know how to do that. It's sort of like it had to all be filed off into different, she had so many folders, so many email folders. Oh my goodness me. But it was great. Then I was working in a small office within the sports centre, but I was with a male colleague. But it wasn't really so much an issue that he was male, but it was more an issue that we didn't really see eye to eye so much. Yeah, so it wasn't that brilliant, but it wasn't really a massive issue. I could focus on my work most of the time. And he just used to get on with, like, half of the time lazing about and half of the time doing his work from how it appeared. That's fine, that's up to him. So that role was really good because I had my own space, and as a dyspraxic it helped me because I could focus very easily within that small office environment. It all went really badly wrong after a year or two. They did a restructure. If you've ever been in like an organisation or a company, when they do a restructure, it could be really, really disrupting to so many people's lives. And they got these top dogs in and paid them really dirty amounts of money to just kind of like take the heart and soul out of that place. They even removed one of the tennis courts and turned it into a gym. And tennis courts in London, indoors, they were such an asset. So that crime was done after I left, thankfully, alhamdulillah. Anyway, the marketing people, and I had some really good managers in that job as well. Oh, that's another thing about work, really, because my managers have often tended to be male, but it hasn't been an issue. It's always been like, it's always worked well, alhamdulillah. It was when I had a female manager who came in, and then she wasn't a very good manager at all, not suited to my style of working anyway. And she and the marketing director decided to move me out of the sports centre completely. And bear in mind that the whole reason I'd gone there was because I wanted to be in a sporting environment, but they moved me to an office which was like a few blocks, like up the road. Not just up the road, like not next door, like across. So I wasn't in a sporting environment, and I was in an open plan office. It was horrific because I can't concentrate in that environment because of my sensory issues with my dyspraxia. And it was quite negative as well, and the work was different and it wasn't clear anymore, and some of the people that I'd been working with had kind of lost their jobs or had to just escape from the toxicity. I've never said that. I said that right, didn't I? So yeah, of this restructure thing. And it was really awful when I left that job, because I left because of being moved out of that sports centre, that environment. That was the reason I went there, and that was what I loved about it. It was like a huge family. All the coaches, all the managers and everybody, it was like a massive family. I loved it. Yeah, I really, really loved it. So it was very sad to leave that, because I left it for, because I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And some of the people that had been brought in, they just weren't really with the ethos of the place as it had been. And you know what else? I haven't told you this yet, but I just said briefly that I had a female manager and she wasn't very good at being a manager. And she started off in the office, which I had to move to later on, and I was in the sports centre in this little office with this colleague. And then she hadn't been to the sports centre, which is it was really like the heart and soul of the whole organisation. She hadn't been there. She hadn't come to look round. So after I'd met her a few times, I was like, when are you going to come and have a look round? You're going to love it. And then eventually she came and had a look round. And then I was asking her, what did you think? And she said, and I thought she was going to feel what I felt, because I felt the heart of that place. It had really amazing events for disabled people. And it hosted a lot of parties for children, and it was always lots of coming and going, lots of regular customers, and lots of excitement, and lots of participation of all different ages and types of people. But she didn't even seem to notice that at all. She just said, tired. So I was like, pardon? She said, yeah, it's tired. I can't remember what else she said because I was just so shocked. But basically she was going along the lines of like, it's ugly, it needs revamping, it needs this, it needs that, it needs rebranding, and the rebrand was terrible. Ugh. I kind of got out halfway through that, but I didn't agree with anything they were doing because they weren't making the branding in an accessible way, which is one of the most important things from my point of view for when you're doing any kind of communications. Then I went into some other marketing roles from there. Yeah, so another thing I wanted to mention, which was a bit of a problem as a Muslim woman working, was when I met colleagues. But the most obvious time this happened was when I was leaving my last role because I was pregnant with my daughter. That I was sort of going around saying goodbye to everybody, and I get so emotional because I just love people so much. So I was sort of like already a bit of an emotional mess, and then I was kind of expected to shake hands with people, and then somebody wanted a hug and stuff like that, and then somebody else, I didn't want to hug him because he was very close to my age, and I didn't feel like it was appropriate to give him a hug, and I think he was really upset about it. But it's not as if how can I explain this? Because he was married and I was married. But I didn't want to be that close to him physically because it just didn't feel appropriate to give him a hug. But about 10 seconds earlier, my manager, who was about my dad's age, and he wasn't even a fantastic manager, but for some reason he gave me a hug, and sometimes you can't really get away, can you? So he'd given me this like goodbye hug, and then I turned around to the other colleagues, but I'd realised by then, like, no hugging, and he was very much younger as well, like my age. So I was kind of like just trying to do like a handshake, but even handshakes, we're not really supposed to touch each other, members of the opposite sex within our religion, so that was kind of like, it's a bit of an issue because you don't want to upset people and you don't want to be unprofessional, because in this culture, people would probably expect handshaking at least, So I think I'm just going to pause there because my eye is getting a bit tired. And there's more things I could have enjoyed talking about with like the role of a woman and going to work, but let's leave it there for that video. Thank you.